Well, how you doing, people? I haven't done a video in a while, and this is the evening of Thanksgiving. And what I wanted to do tonight is just give you a little bit of a breakdown. Now, it's going to be kind of bizarre for those of you be caught into a little time zone, but just hang in there with us, and we'll get through this. And we're going to do a little expose of one of the most accepted teachings in Freemasonry and by those who are in the fraternal brotherhoods of secret societies. And so we're going to just do a little background on this man called Albert Pike. Now, he is one of, I'm sure there's a handful of other writers, but he and Manly P. Hall are the two greatest philosophers in Freemasonry. And we'll just look at a little bit of information on him tonight. And there's very few outsiders that know about the intimate plans of the architects of the New World Order. Now again, New World Order, Novus Ordo Seclorum, on your dollar bill, I in the pyramid, Jay-Z, Kanye, the whole Illuminati Black Brotherhood, the Boulier, I think is the term that Professor Griff uses. If you're not familiar with him, type in Professor Griff, look at some of his videos on the black side of it. Of course, the youth of today, and it's sad that many of our children are completely rebellious to God's ears, and I'm dealing with some of that in my own life, in my own home. And so Satan is very much on the rampage in the films and in Hollywood. All of and most of Hollywood is definitely involved in the Kabbalah, which is what Albert Pike really says that Freemasonry is. So, again, there's very few outsiders that are aware of the plans. Now, we've just had this war begin over in the Middle East. And Albert Pike really is one of the architects who in the 19th century he established a framework for bringing about the one world order based on a vision that was revealed to him. Albert Pike wrote out of a blueprint of events that would play themselves out in the 20th century, with even more of these events yet to come. It is this blueprint which we believe the unseen leaders are following today to engineer the planned third and final world war. Now, we know that in the book of Revelation, it says very clearly that God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, to bring about this cataclysmic event that the Iranians are looking for, and all of the Islamic followers of Islam and believers in Allah are looking for, their Mahdi to return. The Jews, of course, looking for their Messiah. But Albert Pike was quite an interesting fellow. He was born on the 29th of December in 1809 in Boston, and he studied at Harvard. And then later he served as a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. And then after the Civil War, he was found guilty of treason and he was jailed, only to be pardoned by his fellow Freemason president, Andrew Johnson. And on April the 22nd, 1866, he met with the president at the White House on June 20th of 1867, and of course the Scottish Rite officials conferred upon Johnson the Fourth, the 32nd degrees, and he later went to Boston to dedicate a Masonic temple in Washington, D.C. Now, the only monument to a Confederate general in Washington, D.C. was erected in Pike's honor, and it can be found between the Department of Labor building and the municipal building between the 3rd and 4th streets on D Street on the northwest corner. And Pike was a genius. He was able to read in 16 different languages, a 33rd degree Mason. He was one of the founding fathers and head of the ancient accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry, being the Grand Commander of the North American Freemasonry from 1859 to 1891. And in 1869, he was a top leader in the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And in 1871, he wrote the 861-page Masonic Handbook, and it had come to be known as Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Rite of Freemasonry. Now, it was Pike that said that he was a Satanist who indulged in the occult, and he apparently possessed a bracelet which he used to summon Lucifer, with whom he had constant communication, it is stated. He was the Grand Master of a Luciferian group known as the Order of the Palladium, or Sovereign Council of Wisdom, which had been founded in Paris in 1737. Now, Palladiism was an interesting name, of course, to put on them, but he had been brought to Greece from Egypt and by Pythagoras in the 5th century. Palladiism, had been brought to Greece from Egypt by Pythagoras in the 5th century, and it was this cult of Satan that was introduced to the inner circle of the Masonic lodges. It was aligned with the Palladium of the Templars in 1801. Isaac Long, who was a Jew, had brought a statue of Baphomet, or Satan, to Charleston, South Carolina, and where he had helped to establish the ancient and accepted Scottish rite. Long apparently chose Charleston because it was geographically located on the 33rd parallel of latitude. Incidentally, so is Baghdad. And this council is considered to be the Mother Supreme Council of all Masonic lodges of the world. Now, Pike was Long's successor, and he changed the name of the order to the New and Reformed Palladian Rite, or Reformed Palladium. The order contained 2 degrees. Degree number 1 was the Adelph, or brother, and the second was the companion of Ulysses, or companion of Penelope. Pike's right-hand man was Phileas Walter from Switzerland, who was a former Lutheran minister, a Masonic leader, occultist, and spiritualist. Pike was also worked closely with Giuseppe Mazzini of Italy from 1805 to 1872. He was a 33rd degree Freemason who became head of the Illuminati in 1834 and who founded the Mafia. Now, in 1860, together with Mazzini, Lord Henry Palmerston of England, and Otto von Bismarck from Germany, Albert Pike intended to use the Palladium Rite to create a satanic umbrella group that would tie all Masonic groups together. Now, because of Mazzini's revolutionary activities in Europe, the Illuminati had to go underground. In addition to the Supreme Council in Charleston, South Carolina, Pike established the Supreme Council in Rome, Italy, which was led by Mazzini. London, England was led by Palmerston, and Berlin, Germany had been led by Bismarck. Now, he set up 23 subordinate councils in strategic places throughout the world, including 5 grand central directories in Washington, D.C., which would be North America, of course, and in Montevideo, South America, Naples was in Europe, and Calcutta in Asia, and Mauritius in Africa, which were used to gather information. All of these branches have been the secret headquarters for the Illuminati's activities ever since. Now, if you've done any research or looking into Malachi Martin's writings, he made very clearly that Satanists or Illuminists, used by and infiltrated with the Jesuits, have worked their way now into Rome to bring about a socialist dictatorship where, of course, they would be the head. And here's where the conflict is going to continue to arise, where that men of great power believe themselves to be something that they are not. And here's where we get our prophecy going to be fulfilled, that is in Psalms chapter 2, where it says, "Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and his anointed, saying, Let us break their bands asunder, and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision." That's good enough for me. So they're not going to be able to finish this. And during this war that is coming up, it had been laid out in an architecturally beautiful plan to bring about not only the First World War, which they did through the Rothschild financial systems and England and Britain, and this is what's taken place in America. They've overtaken us. They have taken our rights away. All of the 10 planks of communism, you can look them up. We are about 9 out of 10 right now. We have become a socialist dictatorship, which by all accounts and by all interpretations, we are a fascist police state. Watching you everywhere on the streets. We've got drones in the heavens, exactly, because they've set themselves up thinking that they are gods. So again, in his book of Morals and Dogma, he had laid out one of the major source books which the Masonic orders are using, of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, was written in 1871. Now, I'm going to read a quote that he laid out and see if we're not right on track. Now, again, everything is in God's hands, but men are they're swallowing this delusion that Paul writes about. He says, because they receive not the love of the truth, God shall send them strong delusion, and that they all might be damned who love not the truth, but loved the life. So, because they do not love truth, God will send them strong delusion, and then he damns them for believing the lie and not loving the truth. So, in this book, it's a Mason's Guide for Daily Living. In it, Masonry is a search after light, of course. Okay, so Lucifer really to them is God. And it says in there, he says, every Masonic lodge is a temple of religion, and its teachings are instruction in religion. Masonry, like all religions, all the mysteries, hermetism, and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and the sages, or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead, to conceal the truth which it calls light from them, and are drawn them away from it. So the truth must be kept secret, and the masses, which they also consider as the walking dead, of course, and the useless eaters. So this is the reason that you have to inoculate them and give them all kinds of mercury and break down the immune system so the pharmaceutical industry can continue to flourish. So they're in charge of all industry and pharmakeia. That's why in Revelation it makes it very clear. Now, not only illegal drugs, but legal drugs. Legal drugs kill more people than the illegal drugs. So the illegal drugs they can also use for black market, and this is where the mafia comes in, and Mazzini. So the truth has to be kept secret, and these masses of useless eaters need a teaching that's proportioned to their imperfect reason. So every man's conception of God must be proportioned to his mental cultivation and intellectual powers and moral excellence. So God is, as man conceives him, the reflected image of man himself. The next statement reduces the Masonic philosophy to a single premise, and Pike writes, quote, the true name of Satan, the Kabbalists say, is that of Yahweh. Reversed for Satan is not a black god. Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light? doubt it not. Albert Pike explained in Morals and Dogma how the true nature of Freemasonry is kept secret from Masons of lower degrees. Now, the blue degrees are part of the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate. But he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. Their true explication is reserved for the adepts, the princes of Masonry. It is well enough for the mass of those called Masons to imagine that all is contained in the blue degrees, and whoso attempts to undeceive them will labor in vain. Now, the One World Order comes in 1859. So Albert Pike was fascinated with the idea of a one world government and was chosen to coordinate the Illuminati's activities in the United States. Now, of course, this is where it gets just really pulled back and bizarre, because the infiltration that had taken place in our American government had really came to be known also by George Washington, but one of Washington's letters, and it is stated that George Washington was a Freemason, but also it is also stated that amongst that group he was probably one that didn't understand those deeper areas of the dark powers that were trying to bring about their new world order. And he said in the last 11 years of his life that he never darkened the doorway of a Freemasonic hall, and that he had heard of the insidious works that had been infiltrated by this group, or the Black Hand, I guess you could say. So Charles Finney, I believe, was also another early reformer in this country, and he had preached about the evils of Freemasonry because they had been infiltrated by the Illuminati. Now, in 1859, as we stated, he was fascinated with this idea, and the symbol that we have on our dollar bill, of course, was given to us and presented to us by the what is his name? On the 33rd president, of course, Roosevelt had a Secretary of Agriculture, and his name escapes me at this time. But he had been presented with the archived pictures and saw that picture that he thought would be a great design for our dollar. And since that time to this of Roosevelt's administration, it's just driving me crazy. I can't remember his name, but I'll try to get it before we're done, and it should come to me. And we can look it up too. But Pike had said that if we could get through 3 world wars, and with the pen and the tongue, with all our open and secret influences, with the purse, meaning the money, and if need be, with the sword. Okay, so in his letter dated January 22nd, 1870, Mazzini, whom started the mafia, just in short, Mazzini, one of his words was Mazzini authorizes fire, meaning M-A-F, insolence, no, and the mafia actually stood for Mazzini authorizes inferte, or fire, theft, and there was one other for the A. But mafia is a short term for how they could authorize murder and theft and all kinds of mayhem. Same process by which Skull and Bones orders, one of their terms that they use and themes is ordo ab chao, or C-H-A-O in Latin, order out of chaos. So they create the chaos, they offer you the solution, hence they've accomplished their goal. It's a Hegelian dialectic, okay? Cause problem, and then the reaction from the people, and then we have the solution which they wanted all along. So they follow this correspondent plan. They're deceivers, okay? So, but here's what he writes in his book. He says, we must allow, quote, all of the federations to continue just as they are with their systems, their central authorities, and diverse modes of correspondence between high grades of the same rite, organized as they are at present. But we must create a super rite which will remain unknown, to which we will call those Masons of high degree whom we shall select with regard to our brothers in Masonry. These men must be pledged to the strictest secrecy through this supreme rite. We will govern all Freemasonry, which will become the one international center, the more powerful because its direction will be unknown. And then he writes about the 3 world wars. Now, as do most occultists, Albert Pike had a spirit guide, okay, who dispensed divine wisdom and enlightened him regarding how to achieve the New World Order. A spirit guide is a being who meets someone who has given themselves over to the practice of the occult. However, people who are practitioners of the New Age religion do not view this as a bad thing. In fact, they would strongly argue that they are filled with happiness and joy by interacting with their spirit guides that can't quite be seen. It's a breakthrough, it's a stargate, so to speak, and they're in touch with these creatures. And it's real bizarre and fun to get involved with these spirits. See? So they're following, really, again, the voice of lies. And it's deceiving them. And they will, if not repent, turn from it, they will be destroyed. So one of the messages that Albert Pike received from his spirit guide, and which in reality we know to be a demonic vision, he described in a letter that he wrote to Mazzini, dated on August the 15th, 1871. Now this letter graphically outlined plans for 3 world wars that were seen as necessary to bring about the one world order, and we can marvel at how accurately it has predicted events that have already taken place. This is not because the devil has powers of prophecy, but because his agents have undertaken to manipulate political events to closely follow his designs. For a short time, this letter was on display in the British Museum Library in London, and it was copied by William Guy Carr, former intelligence officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. And it said very clearly that the First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia, and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agentur, or the agents, of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. At the end of the war, communism will be built and used in order to destroy the other governments and in order to weaken their religions. So again, religion is at the base of all of these things. And I always like to bring up sometimes that the word religion is only mentioned twice in all of Scripture, possibly 3 times, but it's very clear that he says true religion is to feed the hungry, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep yourself unspotted from the world. So that's true religion that he writes about in, I believe it's in Timothy or in the book of James. So we can see that religions are what has created problems in the world. It was religion and politics, of course, that killed Jesus Christ. And of course, he whipped the money changers out of the temple, which we could consider the synagogue of Satan. To this day, the bloodline has still ruled up through the Rothschild families, spilled over to another 12 families other than themselves, spilled over to the Council of 300, and then on the American soil through David Rockefeller, which is again his agent that works under him, and has funded both sides of wars, created the Chase Manhattan Bank, Standard Oil, so banking and oil and finances, and then of course the media that they all own is projecting their satanic Messiah's message. Did an interview with Lindsey Williams a few years ago, and what he made very clear was that the elite friends that he sat with on the Alaska pipeline said very clearly, we have used our devil's Messiah, our satanic Messiah, to bring America under, and is ready to accept their new world order. And so this is really where we're at now in today. People are just set on fire from hell, and they continue to just burn with lust, not only for blood and death, but children. And as we see here recently, they have been caught again with this man who was an entertainer who had ties right up to the twisted house of England, the Queen, all the way up into her. And all these people are really perverted in the true sense. And so their Second World War must be fomented, he said, by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough. That political Zionism would be strong enough to... Now, hold on. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel. Now, if you stop there and you remember that it was the Balfour Declaration that was simply gave them back the land after they had been dispersed for some 1900 years. Now all of a sudden they have a land, but they're placed right into Palestine to cause this havoc that we're seeing in the world today. And this is the problem. Satan, through the willing lust of men, is fulfilling his will, but it is also fulfilling God's will. So Satan destroys those and will destroy them because they receive not the love of the truth. Hence, throughout Scripture, it says the wicked destroy themselves. They dig a pit and then they fall into it. And then it ties in, of course, with their alien agenda. They believe the entities are going to come in from above and help them. This is why it says in Revelation very clear that they will go to make war with him in the heavens. But when they got established there in 1947, that they knew that America would stand behind them because of the scriptures saying that Israel is God's people and that land was given to them. Well, I hasten to bring up the point that the land for them to have peace was meant by covenant only in the Torah and in the law. And if they was to keep covenant with God, that they would be blessed in their field, blessed in the cities, blessed in the towns, blessed in their bodies, blessed in the cattle, blessed in their fruits and their vegetables and their land. But because that covenant had been broken, they were dispersed, fulfilling God's prophecy again. And so that will not be a land of peace until the Prince of Peace comes. So they created that sovereign state of Israel in the midst of Palestinians and kicked out all the people. So for the last 50 years, of course, they would be hated. And America has gone behind this war in complete blindness, supporting ungodly, unholy wars. But it has to be done. But there are a few people that are very much aware of this. So they were placed right in Palestine. So during the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for a final social cataclysm. So God is right on time on his calendar These people are fulfilling it just as Nebuchadnezzar did when he was used by God, because God says, I lift up and I put down. I raise up kings and nations, and at what instant shall I speak concerning a nation that it should be overthrown or uplifted? So God is still on the throne, and we are fulfilling his plan, whether we realize it or know it or not. So after this Second World War, communism was made strong enough to begin to take over weaker governments, and they did. And in 1945, at the Potsdam Conference, between Truman and Churchill and Stalin, a large portion of Europe was simply handed over to Russia. And on the other side of the world, the aftermath of the war with Japan helped to sweep the tide of communism into China. So now I just want to read the quote that he gives you for the Third World War, and this is the one that we're going to see in our lifetime, and this is the one that's been started here in the end of this 2012. He says, quote, "The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionist and the leaders of Islamic world. We see this. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel and America, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete exhaustion and physical, moral, and spiritual and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror shall clearly to the nation shall show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer." Wow, that's heavy, bizarre stuff, man. So let's finish it out. So they will receive the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So, since the terrorist, quote, attacks of 9/11, the world events in the Middle East show a growing unrest and instability between Jews and Arabs, and of course America, where the whole world hates us, and they are set on fire with that hate. This is completely in line with the call for a third world war to be fought between the two and their allies on both sides. This third world war is still to come, and recent events show us that it is not far off. So, in closing, that's some of Albert Pike's writings. You can type his name in and read some more, but he is very highly regarded as one of the great philosophers and architects of this great work that they're involved with and in. And we have another architect that's in charge. His name is Jesus Christ. He's building his church. He's calling out for us to repent in this time of darkness. Isaiah 60 said, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. And then in the next verse he says, For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people, but the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. So hang in there, continue to fight the good fight, overcome, and he that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, Jesus said, as I also overcame and am set down in my Father's throne. He that overcometh, he would, and keepeth his works, he said, that he would not blot out his name out of the book of life. He that overcometh shall also be ruler over the nations, he said. And he that overcometh, he would give him a new name, and in that stone, a white stone, a new name that no man knows but he himself. So this mystery Babylon that we read so much about in Revelation, and it makes it so clear where he says, And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And he said that he saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. He goes on to continue to say very clearly that with violence shall she be brought down. I believe without a doubt that America is this mother of harlots through the unseen hand of the Illuminati and the banking system and the Vatican ruling right over here into America. And the conflict is in the higher echelons. In other words, in the high areas is where the war is going. Remember, Daniel said it. He said, I saw war. There was war in heaven. And in Revelation, there was war in heaven. So in the heavenly places, in the minds of men, is where the war is taking place. Let's give ourselves, and let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. We'll see you next time, and may God bless you. Goodbye.